Okay, we're live. Let's see. Fix my hair. Let's see what we got here. How's it going, Omar? When will Mito Mag be released? It'll have 3 forms, and that will be out probably in the next week or two. I'm gonna guess 2 weeks, just to be conservative. And for this live, I'm gonna do things a little differently. I have up here pretty cool study, and this is actually a great website, Sci-Hub, and you can actually access full studies. So unlike, when you just see the abstract on this website, which is, if you just search Sci-Hub, you can actually pull up entire research articles. And I'm not going to say that I'm versed on interpreting literature like this, because it's a whole skill, and people debate, just like with spiritual beliefs and stuff. They debate scientific articles, and you could just go on and on and on forever, getting lost in the minutia of the research. And I believe it's really a never-ending battle, because you can just go through all these studies, and you're battling with studies, and it's just endless. And I don't think it's wise to just only go off of studies. That's why I'll often reference people with severe lipofuscin, like Dr. Jack Cruz, so that you can see on their face, and you could see in reality, it's called anecdotal evidence of what's going on. But it is useful to look at articles, and especially to find ones that are not shared very often, like this one from 2014, Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity Journal, Lipid Peroxidation, Production, Metabolism, and Signaling, Mechanisms of, this is a really hard one to say, but malondialdehyde and 2-hydroxy-2-nonenal. So these are 2 compounds that PUFAs, that I talk about a lot, generate. And it's a big deal. These are emphasized as MDA, or abbreviated rather as MDA and 4-HNE. And these have a lot of really toxic effects on the system. And I love this article because it really breaks it down. With my posts where I say, PUFAs cause cancer and PUFAs cause diabetes, they're like, okay, Matt, show me the proof. Well, here's the proof. Antonio Ayala, 2014. Here's the proof that omega-3 DHA algae oil causes cancer. So here we go. Pathological processes, Alzheimer's disease. And this is for both of those compounds. And here's all the references. That's a pretty good amount. It's not just 1 or 2 studies. Alzheimer's disease, cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, liver disease, Parkinson's disease. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But this is really how it works. And iron catalyzes this whole process. And actually at the start of it, it brings that up. The hydroperoxyl radical plays an important role in the chemistry of lipid peroxidation. This pronated form of superoxide yields hydrogen peroxide, which can react with redox active metals, including iron or copper, to further generate free radicals through the Fenton or Haber-Weiss reactions. So a Fenton reaction is really the big one, and that's from iron overload. Copper is our savior. That's the beneficial one, but it's really this iron Fenton reaction that's the huge problem with PUFAs. And I've debated Morley Robbins on my podcast, or in private, and it's it kind of comes back to like beliefs about diet and nutrition and sugar, but I think that it's wise to avoid consuming lots of polyunsaturated fats, especially cod liver oil. It just doesn't make sense to me in a world of iron overload. And, in Morley's words, everyone's copper deficient. So I was recently just listening to him talk about ozone therapy and hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and his thoughts on it. And he thinks they're overutilized in the alternative health space. And I would agree with him. And he said, there's not one person pretty much that isn't copper deficient because of the iron overload issue. But I would say if that's true, then why consume concentrated polyunsaturated fats like fermented cod liver oil? It just doesn't make sense. So I don't believe that the solution to lipid peroxidation is bioavailable copper. I think it's a little more complex than that. I think we actually need vitamin E, and not whole food vitamin E, but what's shown in the literature to work and what the liver actually uses. It's called D-alpha tocopherol. And gamma tocopherol helps as well, but the alpha tocopherol is what protects our cells from the damages of lipid peroxidation and these compounds. But when you have vitamin C, whole food vitamin C with vitamin E together, vitamin C will actually regenerate the E. And I actually had the study up on that somewhere. There's a good one that I found. Yeah, vitamin C and E. I'm gonna try to pull that up real quick. Trying to make these lives a little more informative than just Q&As, because sometimes I feel like I'm being a little repetitive. So just breathe some new life into this discussion and maybe get some things going here. Okay, if my computer would load, for some reason it's not loading, so I'm just gonna let that go for now. Any recommendations for a hose filter if you can't buy a whole house filter? I'm using pristine hydro water in 5-gallon just with my travel unit, and it's a pain in the butt. Yeah, I did that for years. It's good in a pinch. A hose filter. So I'm not sure exactly. Are you talking about for gardening, Nathan? You'll have to clarify what you mean there. Like, what is the hose filter for? Omar, I haven't heard of that one. I'm not sure about that, Sheila Jeet. Jeffrey says, thanks for bringing back Digest It All. Is it necessary to stack it with ancestral pancreas? I don't think it's necessary. I think it could be beneficial. Obviously, when you eat the pancreas, you're going to get digestive enzymes, and that's cool. But I think, like pancreatin is an enzyme that you get, I believe, in desiccated pancreas, which is beneficial. But I like the digestive enzymes if I had to choose one. They're more potent. Hi, Teresa. Lucy says, hi, Matt. Any thoughts on taurine for hair health? I think taurine supplementation can be really beneficial, especially for energy production and heart issues. Hair health, I would more use organoliving silica, which is a liquid form of silica, and whole food vitamin C. Because the tyrosinase enzyme that contains 2 atoms of copper benefits hair, eye, skin health, but that's not its only function. That's what a lot of people talk about. You have the Dr. Sebi folks really focusing on melanin, and the tyrosinase enzyme is well known to affect melanin and regulate melanin, but it does so much more, especially with regulating redox metals like iron. It's involved in the histaminase enzyme, which regulates histamine, and the DAO enzyme is copper dependent. So it does a lot. Whole food vitamin C and vitamin E are so foundational to guarding against oxidative stress. And as you guys probably know, I like to simplify a lot of diseases. You get diagnosed with XYZ condition, and there's a million conditions out there, and each one has its own therapy. But what if there's a blanket therapy for every disease? And that's kind of what I tried to create with the CLF protocol: calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And you can delve into each one of those areas, and there's different tools to use for each one. For example, for calcification, you'll be using magnesium and vitamin K2. For fibrosis, you'll be using systemic enzymes. And for lipofuscin, you'll be using primarily vitamin E, but also red light therapy, which helps a lot. And whole food C helps a lot with lipofuscin as well. Not only because it synergizes with vitamin E and helps it work, but also because it directly helps you regulate iron, which then helps the lipofuscin situation. What do you think of trace mineral research drops? I used them for years. I think they're good. They're not ideal. Ideally, I would get my minerals from shilajit and bicarbonate, but I feel like it helped me out for years. It's definitely very affordable. It's definitely more affordable than buying magnesium bicarbonate. I think that's a waste of money, though. I would not buy magnesium. I would make it, and you can make it for pennies if you do it right. Any ETA on Simply K? Oh, the Purely K, the vitamin K2, that should be back, I think, by the end of July, but hopefully sooner. I'm just being conservative now with my estimates, so don't get your hopes up. Steen, how do I get your products to Denmark? I think they have mail forwarding things for international. I would look into that. I don't really have an answer for you, though. Nathan says, I read a comment from a vegan that was saying that regenerative animal farming will take up more land than a regenerative vegetable farm. What would you say to that? I believe in regenerative animal farms. Will take up more land. I think it's really about land usage. I don't think it's like a apples to apples comparison. Because if you do it right with ruminant animals, whether it be cows, goats, sheep, lamb, if you do it right, then they will regenerate the topsoil. And chicken poop, ruminant animal poop, regenerates the soil and adds nitrogen and nutrients to the soil, and then that will keep it going. I don't know how you can do veganic farming without depleting the soil over time, from what I've seen, because I know there are people that practice that, like veganic permaculture or whatever. I don't know what inputs they use, because I know they don't use like bone char and stuff. They just use like rock dust, and I don't even know if they use worm castings. But yeah, I would say it's just not a fair argument, because even if vegetable farming uses less space, you'll still deplete the soil over time. So I'd rather use more space and regenerate the soil so that it's a perpetual process that doesn't run out. Yeah, but I'll be learning a lot about this. We're going full bore here. That's why I'm kind of overwhelmed with the academy and everything, just trying to keep my head above water these last 2 months, just moving and setting up. But We have 3 goats here. We have chickens. We're trying to build a new chicken coop. We're trenching tomorrow, which is building a ditch. It's going to be actually 400 feet long to bring power and water to different areas on the property, specifically to the goats. And then before it snows, we're trying to build a 33-foot dome, geodesic dome for growing, and we're going to be growing fruits and vegetables. But yeah, I think, if someone wants to do the vegan thing, then they definitely can't live in Idaho, right? It has to be like Hawaii or Ecuador or Costa Rica or something like that. And they have to pretty much do the Douglas Graham 80-10-10 thing, right? And we know how those people turn out. We have photos of them as they age, what they look like. And I think sugar is pretty good at managing a lot of stuff in the body. What I mean by that is lipofuscin, managing oxidative stress. Sugar is anti-inflammatory. It's not inflammatory as almost everybody says in the alternative health space. But obviously they're not supplementing, right? Or if they are, it's like DHA or something. But I think fruitarian with coconuts would be like the way to go, but you wouldn't really need to farm. It would just be like a foraging fruitarian lifestyle. And then there's the whole issue of animal protein and amino acids, and your protein requirements do go down when you eat more carbs. And that's not talked about enough. There's nutrient sparing that isn't often talked about. And the repeat or metabolic community likes to focus in on magnesium in this context. When they hear people like me talking about supplementing magnesium, and they're all about calcium, 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 even calcium carbonate, supplementing calcium, and they say you don't need to supplement magnesium. You can get it from coffee, you can get it from orange juice, and not only that, you regenerate magnesium. You actually recycle it when you eat enough sugar or carbohydrates. And I agree to some extent to that. About 40% of your magnesium is recycled if you're not keto or, raw primal or carnivore or whatever. If you're not on an insane, unsustainable diet, fad diet, then you can regenerate your magnesium and you don't need to supplement as much. But I think there is a case for context. And like when I was taking shots of DHA, and even if I wasn't taking shots of DHA, let's say you got into alternative health and you bought into Joe Rogan's fish oil spiel, right? And you bought into the resveratrol man, and you were taking all the things, right? And then maybe you found my work and you went from alternative health to alternative health, and you started questioning resveratrol. Does resveratrol cause cancer? Concentrated? Yes, it does. Does fish oil and algae oil cause heart disease and diabetes and dementia? Yes, it does. And then you start going down those roads, and then you say, wow, okay, there's a case for supplementing to catch up and to recover from what you've done before. And that's often not talked about. And when people are talking about supplements, they just think, oh, do I have to be on these for the rest of my life? It's like, no. It's all context. It's dosage. The dosage depends on, did you just start taking it? Like, I'm still megadosing Purely K. I'm averaging about 8 capsules a day. 2 capsules have 400 micrograms of menaquinone 7, which is the largest amount I've ever seen in a K2 supplement. So I'm taking 1,600 micrograms of vitamin K2 a day. And I'm doing that to regenerate my dentition, my teeth, my gums, my bones, because I know that I chipped a tooth when I was vegan, and I know that it was because I was K2 deficient, and I was primarily fruitarian. So there are a lot of nutrients that you don't get. And this is a long rant for that question, but it's very complex. And I do know healthy vegans, specifically fruitarians. I think going on green powders and a vegetable-based diet doesn't make sense. You're going to have some benefit from the fiber with estrogen detox, estrogen as it's called. Fiber does detoxify excess estrogen. It's not just the raw carrot salad and bamboo shoots. It's all fiber will basically carry out excess estrogen. And where does excess estrogen come from? It comes from PUFAs, primarily polyunsaturated fats, and utilizing them for fuel because you're keto and you're fat burning. But no one ever asks what's in the fat. It's PUFAs. Do you recommend Shilajit for dogs? How much? Benefits and risks? Yes, I recommend Shilajit for every animal. How much and benefits, risks? The only risk is detoxing heavy metals too quickly. And if the animal, whether it's a human or a dog or cat or whatever animal, cannot carry out the metals, then they could cause some issues. But Shilajit's, as long as you don't high dose it out the gate, and a high dose, I'm talking like a gram plus, then it's fairly safe. One tablet a day, just 200 milligrams, is really safe. Most of the literature of the benefits shows around 500 milligrams. So that'd be like 2.5 tablets of my Shilajit product. But the benefits are for every condition. That's why I call the product panacea. Obviously not medical advice, but mineral imbalance is at the root cause of most disease, osteoporosis, arthritis. Animals get this as well. Immunological issues, leukemia, heart issues. I mean, dogs and cats are pets, eating Petco food, which is all garbage. And most pet owners are buying their pet food from like PetSmart or Petco. Not smart. Some lucky animals, I would guess it's like 10%, in the industrialized world, are eating their biologically appropriate diet, which is raw meat. That's why cats will catch mice and birds and bats and whatever they can get their hands on. It's their natural diet, right? Same with dogs. But to reverse disease in your pet, things like vitamin E, Shilajit, even whole food vitamin C, but largely if there's just one thing, it'd be the Shilajit for dogs, because it's helping with the calcification, it's helping with the iron overload, it's helping with the lipofuscin, because Shilajit contains ceruloplasmin, doesn't just contain copper, it contains active copper in Shilajit, and that will help regulate the iron, which is excess in your dog, most likely. Teresa says, I've been having this weird issue of suddenly stopping breathing. You know how you can control your breath, but then if you stop, your body takes over. Well, when I'm in that state of my body regulating breathing on its own, my lungs will just stop for a second, and then I have to take a big inhale. It's freaky. Any ideas? I'm not too sure. Intuitively, I would just say try to work on your nervous system, because that sounds like it's like an autonomic nervous system dysregulation. And one of my favorite tools, even though it's exotic, is the sensory deprivation chamber. And these are cropping up everywhere now, so they're pretty easy to find. But it's one of the best tools that I've found to help reset the nervous system. Um, and you don't have to do anything. Uh, you don't even have to know what you're doing. You just go in there for an hour and you just try to just focus on your breath. That's it. And my experience of over 50 floats has been that my nervous system will, over time, it's a cumulative effect. My baseline stress level will go down and my whole system regulates itself better, immune wise, psychologically, just everything. It's just more stable. Like there's less waves. So I would look into that. Um, yeah, if you don't have access to that, I think a poor man's version of sensory deprivation would be, I mean, I guess it's not really sensory deprivation, but the New Calm thing, which is different from Brain FM. And I have friends whose parents have created apps like this. And there's a million zillion apps, and everyone says theirs is the best. But this one, you put on an eye mask, you listen to neuroacoustic software, really advanced algorithms built into the music, and it relaxes your whole nervous system. And it's worked for me numerous times. So let's see. Thoughts on magnesium malate, magnesium bound to malic acid. Hey Joe, that's not one of my favorite forms. I think it's better than oxide, carbonate, citrate, but it's still not ideal. I like the amino acid called chelated forms, bound to threonate, bound to glycinate or bisglycinate, bound to taurate. I think if you're not going with magnesium bicarbonate or magnesium chloride topically, bicarbonate orally. I don't like bicarbonate like soaking in. I don't think that really makes sense. But bicarbonate orally, chloride topically, and then amino acid forms orally, which aren't ideal. You have to take at least 6 pills a day to, get around 400 milligrams of actual magnesium. And when you think about it, we really want to get up to like the 2 to 3 gram mark, 2 to 3,000 milligrams of magnesium to move the needle. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of the sensory deprivation, is because if you're taking shots of bicarbonate, homemade, don't buy it, again, taking homemade magnesium bicarbonate, and then you go in a float tank, like maybe once, twice a week, then you're getting a huge influx of magnesium chloride. Well, they use magnesium sulfate unless you have your own tank, because magnesium chloride is more expensive. So when you go to a float spa, you're going to have 1,200 pounds of magnesium sulfate, which is magnesium bound to sulfur, which sulfur's okay. Some people hate it because, we already have enough sulfur is the idea. But if someone's been exposed to a lot of radiation, which some people have, or for whatever reason they can't move out the radiation, then sulfur will sulfate, radioactive isotopes in the body and carry it out. So sulfur does have its place, and in my experience with sensory deprivation, I feel like it did raise my red blood cell magnesium test. Now I'm overdue like a year doing another full Monty iron panel, which shows my magnesium level. Part of it's because I'm like 2 hour or hour and a half from the nearest testing area, but another aspect is that I've been kind of experimenting with getting rid of iron without blood donation. I was probably responsible somewhat for the, you know, pushing, you know, Red Cross blood donation, you know, modern day bloodletting for the last few years. And I think it can be beneficial, especially if someone builds up first with like sodium and potassium, because you have to kind of build up the adrenal function before you go and donate blood. If you've ever donated blood and you kind of get dizzy and you feel like you're going to faint, that's because your adrenals are shot, because your minerals are shot, because you have calcification, which depletes your sodium, potassium, or you've just been in chronic stress, adrenaline, and adrenaline will deplete you of sodium and potassium. So, and sodium and potassium play with magnesium, and there's this big interplay, right? So you're deficient in everything. It's not just like, you know, supplement this and that. You have your 5 major electrolytes: magnesium, potassium, sodium, calcium, chloride. The one that we probably need the least is called calcium. And in the metabolic community, that's the one that gets the most highlighted. They also talk about salts, but there's a heavy emphasis on calcium. If you're consuming dairy, you don't have to really think about calcium. I don't think you need to supplement it. You know, I think pearl powder, I use it for my teeth. I think it's great for that. But other than that, I would not, you know, emphasize calcium. But sodium chloride, salt, you know, potassium bicarbonate, magnesium bicarbonate, all forms of magnesium besides oxide, citrate, carbonate. I think everyone's mostly deficient in all those. And even up here in Idaho, I talk to people about salt and they're like, "What do you mean, Matt?" My neighbor said this. He's like, "I thought low salt was best." And here he is dealing with a health condition. And I'm like, people still believe this, right? It's like the low salt thing is kind of on the same vibe as like low cholesterol, low saturated fat, which is kind of insane. I think there's a case for saturated fat maybe restricting, but not cholesterol. So anyway, let's see. Joe says, "I've been slowly improving my eczema, but still some symptoms. I noticed a difference from taking aspirin. I started to megadose." Joe, that's awesome. I got loose stools this week, so I stopped. However, I don't think it was the cause. I think the root cause may be low stomach acid. How can I increase my stomach acid naturally? I do apple cider vinegar and HCl. Yeah, so there's a great book. Why is my internet not working? Let me see if I can I might just restart my computer. Yeah, my computer just crapped out. I'm gonna restart it. Stupid Macs. I thought they were better than PCs, but I'm starting to question it. So the book is called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. Definitely check that out. It's a big topic, but I think to answer your question succinctly, it's salt. How can you raise your hydrochloric acid naturally? It's sodium chloride. The chloride ion helps support hydrochloric acid production. So I would just avoid Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, red salts, and just stick with the clear white salts, Icelandic, Maldens, Maltons. You know, although some people say molten salt has aluminum in it. You know, you can choose your battles. People forget that silica detoxifies aluminum, and they're pretty much identical chemically. And so if you have sufficient silica coming in, you will push out the aluminum, and you don't have to micromanage every single thing because you'll go crazy. But if you have low stomach acid, most likely you're not eating enough salt. And I've been really inspired, like I always am, by my podcast guests. and particularly Lauren De La Cruz, which is a return guest, and Jayton Miller, both of which I've had on within the last month. Both of them talked about the importance of salt in those shows. And Jayton has a lot of cool, sometimes controversial tools that he uses. And this one's not so controversial as other things that he takes, but he takes USP sodium tablets. And, these are almost like what you would use in the military or something. But I thought it was really cool because it's so convenient. If you're traveling, you just throw a bottle in your bag, and they're 1 gram sodium tablets, just pure 100% sodium chloride, nothing else, no other minerals. And, if you can afford it, Kintone, which is heavily promoted in like the biohacking community, I took those for years. It's okay. I think BioOcean is a little more affordable through Shen Blossom. It's the same product. I take that one, but it's way more expensive. And I've cut my finger up multiple times with those little glass ampules because you break one side, you break the other side, and they could get sharp, and it's kind of a hassle. Or they sell bottles that you keep in the fridge, and you can just do shots of salt. I think that's better than these tablets, but for $12, $13, I forget the price, for like a ton of these tablets, again, it's, a do your best thing. And a lot of people don't have the money to stack all the things that I do because I'm 11 years in and I'm crazy and I just like, seeing how much I can push it. But if you're just getting into this and you're not trying not to get overwhelmed, or, like me, you worked minimum wage jobs and you're just, don't have a huge cash flow, then these sodium tablets are a great way to go. And especially if you live in a hot climate, especially if you have crappy digestion, if you have a low stomach acid or assumed low stomach acid, try increasing your salt. And yes, you could salt your food, and you should salt your food liberally to taste. But in between meals, when you take sodium chloride, what you're doing is you're assisting the whole stress response, and you're helping your body maintain homeostasis with glucocorticoids, with aldosterone, with cortisol and adrenaline, with it's all run by minerals, and even down to cellular voltage and generating electricity in your cells. And we don't have to talk about pumps and sodium potassium pump. And, they've said that there's not enough energy generated by these pumps, pretty much saying that the whole thing is a theory and false. So, when we get into the weeds of like membranes and pumps, I don't really like talking about it because I'm not that smart to understand, Gilbert Ling's work and why, what the alternative hypothesis is. But, Ray Pete talks about that. I think Keith Littlewood on my recent show alluded to it a little bit, how it most likely works versus the pump membrane theory. But start with salt. Let's see. Furthermore, I have some visible blood vessels right on my nose. How do you work on healing capillaries? I'm a 20-year-old male on the whole Vitalife CL-off thing, but healing from veganism. Joe, I would hit it with red light. Gemba Red. Gemba Red on my website has the most affordable red light therapy devices. And if you can see your blood vessels in your nose, then that means that it's very superficial, and the red light will hit them and help them regenerate. Other things that help the capillaries include the bioflavonoid rutin, which is a part of the whole food vitamin C complex, and that helps strengthen the capillaries, and it's a critical part of vitamin C, with ascorbation, with ascorbic acid, which is a small aspect to it, tyrosinase, P factors, J factors, it all works together. So you might want to double up on your whole food C if you're in Southern California or Texas or Arizona or somewhere in the world where you have access to local or relatively local from Mexico or whatever, seasonal fruit. If you're someone like me in Idaho, I think it makes sense to supplement because I don't like eating fruit shipped from Mexico up here in Idaho. You know, unless it's for whatever reason, it's decent quality. I think it makes sense to supplement because a lot of people are anti-vitamin C supplement. They say, oh, just eat whole foods. Well, okay, that doesn't work so well for me up in Idaho. You know, sauerkraut, sure, but I can only eat so much sauerkraut. Because 1 cup of sauerkraut has about, I think it's 600 milligrams of vitamin C. It's something ridiculous, 400 to 600 milligrams. But I think it's best to diversify, and I particularly like amla berry, camu berry, and my formula has rose hips in it as well. But from what I understand, pretty much everyone's not getting enough whole food vitamin C because of iron overload and all of these issues we're dealing with. But yeah, Joe, just to answer your question, I would say systemic enzymes, whole food vitamin C, vitamin E, and red light therapy. Just make sure you're on all those, especially the red light. Rebecca says, any recommendation for whole house water filtration versus just under the counter? Yes, let me pull up the website here. It's called Flow Motion Water Systems, and I think you have to contact them for the whole house, but it seems like a pretty good system. I think you're going to spend around 10, 11K or so on it. So just make sure, you know, you're in it, you own your house, all that stuff. But yeah, I know in my video on the Academy, I didn't really give specifics on brands. That was by design because I just had a lot of people just questioning just the basics of my whole house water filters. I just wanted to do an overview of it. But it is really simple. I mean, you could custom build it. It doesn't take too much expertise. If you get the components, your plumber can pretty much do the rest. But it is worth having one. As I talk about in the video, it's kind of foundational. Have you heard about the Omica water filter? Yeah, my friend Justin of Extreme Health Radio uses that and he likes it. It's different from the Pristine Hydro because it injects back in chloride minerals instead of bicarbonate minerals. That's the biggest difference. It also doesn't have dual DI, which means 2 deionization filters in it, or even 1, I believe. So it's questionable whether it takes out the acids. Might to some degree because it uses some different types of media. But I just like the Pristine Hydro for now. We're still working behind the scenes to create the Mitolife drinking water filter. It's just taking forever because it's like just to get a physical box, just like a prototype, takes months and months and months. So I think I've been talking about this since like last June or something. But it is one of those things that takes 1 to 2 years to develop, and I think it'll be worth it. I'm just going to stop giving teasers because people think it's coming out in the next month, and it's just one of those things where when you're building it from scratch, it's just back and forth emails forever building it. And it's not just like I'm paying someone to build it for me. We're building it from scratch. So it'll be different from any filter you've ever seen too. Recommendations for air purifier for a house high in mold until we can move. Check out, I think he has it up on his website. Let me see. Crucial 4, he just came out with an ozonator, my friend Charles. Let me search ozone. Yeah, it's an investment. It's 3,200 bucks, but I'm gonna try one out. It's called the Alpha X cold plasma ozone generator. Poor man's version would be the SOTA, which is like 450 bucks, which to me is the most affordable ozonator I've ever seen. But again, that's coronal discharge. This is cold plasma, so it's slightly different. This one you could like run nonstop forever. So yeah, I would say, running ozone ideally through your HVAC system. When you're gone, run it if you don't have any animals in the house, run it all day. And again, if you can't afford $3,200 for this, then you would go to eBay and search SOTA water ozonator. And unfortunately, that'll only run for an hour, so that's another detriment. So, if you're leaving the house to go to work and you put the air stone in your water on your kitchen counter and you hit the button and you run it for 60 minutes, well, great. You're going to get some ozone in your environment, but it's not nearly as much as something like this. So I'm excited to try it out. I think if you watch my whole house water filter video, you'll see that we had some spills. Had about 2 or 3 catastrophic, just say leaks, and the floor was flooded. And fortunately, I didn't have my new solar batteries at the time, and the old ones were up on a pallet, but still there was white mold fuzz on the floor like the next week. So, I think if you're a homeowner, ozone is a smart thing to have, to use that tool to prevent or treat mold. And some mold experts will say ozone does not get to the root of the problem. It's debatable. Like my friend PJ Harlow I had on my podcast, all these different beliefs about what works. Personally, for mold, I use primarily Oregano spray from North American Urban Spice, which does kill the mycotoxins and the mold directly, and ozone. I think those are the two. And if you want to get into something like Homebiotic, which I had a video on from years ago, which is like probiotics for your home, poor man's version of that, EM1. EM-1, put that in a spray bottle, does the same thing, pretty much. Pretty much is the same thing. And you spray that in your bathtub, in your bathroom, wherever there's moisture, wherever it's humid, and these bacteria will help to clean it up. But there's some ideas for you. But Nathan, simple answer would be to move, but is it that simple if you're in a house of mold? That's most people's response, because when you peel back the wall and the dry wall, if it's just a wall of black mold, some people will say you're fighting an uphill battle, even with all the ozone in the world. And perhaps, maybe there's a way to like foam insulate and seal it off and not have any come into the house. But from what I've heard, it's one of those things where you just pack up and get out of Dodge and get your ass out of there. So yeah, that's, something to consider. What dose would you go for aspirin daily? So when I got into it, I was taking about 1 gram daily, up to 2 grams. I did notice some symptoms of K deficiency, like bleeding gums, easier bleeding gums and stuff, because aspirin will slightly deplete your vitamin K. So it's always smart when you're taking aspirin to take vitamin K2 as well. And you can kind of keep going down that thread. I know if I'm taking aspirin, so I have to take K2, so I have to take vitamin E, so I have to take vitamin C, and you just keep going on, right? But the whole idea is that if you have everything coming in regularly, right? And you're drinking your milk, you're taking your Shilajit, you're, mineral balancing and everything, then you probably don't have to think about those things too much because they're already coming in. But I think the biggest consideration with balancing out aspirin is if you're taking like 2, 3, 4, 5 grams a day. Like when you get up like higher dose, more than just 1 or 2 a day, that's when you really want to make sure that you're on K2, vitamin E, which vitamin C, which regenerates E, right, and all the things. So, but I think acetyl salicylic acid, aka aspirin, is super beneficial for so many conditions. Actually against convid, but skin conditions, and topically, it's incredible. I think it's underutilized topically. And I like to just keep it in my bag. I have like my bug out bag or just my bag that I take with me whenever I go driving, whenever I go in the forest. I always have this bag. And one of the things in that bag is aspirin, just because it's so versatile. And also Benadryl, which I might get into at some point. But, as far as explaining it. But the antihistamine is very smart to have as well, not only in your bag to go, but also just in your house, because you never know when you'll have an allergic reaction to something. And oregano is a pretty good antihistamine, but it doesn't compare to something like Benadryl. Teresa says, how do you like your new home? I love it. It's very secure, very safe, beefing up security, very peaceful, a lot of moose, deer, some elk. Haven't seen any bears yet. But yeah, it's really cool to just be building a homestead with somebody that I love and having fun doing it, and having chickens and goats and bees and soon a garden, and filtered water and power. A lot of people always say like, Matt, you're living my dream. I'm like, well, move towards it. I was living in an RV like 4 years ago, and I wouldn't have dreamed that I would be here in 4 years. But it's one of those things where you just keep working towards it. And if you really want it, you can make it work. But yeah, I think the way that the world's going, I was recently talking to Justin of Extreme Health Radio because I was on a show, and he was saying to listen to this podcast, and he said it would make me happy with my decision to move. Let me see if I could find it here. Tinfoil Hat Podcast with Zach Voorhees. Justin recommended that, and he said it talks about like the Great Reset and all that stuff. But yeah, we're in really interesting. Oh, there it is, playing. Yeah, we're in really interesting times, and I think there's so many reminders with the power outage in Texas and just people losing their minds, especially in the alternative health space. It just made me kind of back away from all of it, distance myself, because you never know, who's online, what weirdos. So, yeah, I would just encourage all you to find a fortress, build it out, kind of trust no one to a degree, and really get sustainable, because that's like the best course of action for the future, instead of just thinking that it's all good and it'll all be good, because they just have to flip the switch and no more power, right? Can't run the pumps, can't get water, can't get gas. Jeffrey says, thoughts on dosing T3 between 25 micrograms to 50 micrograms? Yeah, that's a pretty good dose. Um, I think if you move up to that, then it's good. Like I would say start at 25 for 2 weeks. So, have your calendar, mark off, get a whiteboard like I have and write T3 for 14 days, just so you keep track. Because I know or keep it in your notes the day you started and the day you're ending or whatever, but log it. Just a very basic, write it down on a post-it or whatever. And after 14 days, if you feel good or maybe you don't feel anything, then try upping it to 50 and take two. I believe a grain is generally 25 micrograms if we're talking about like Cynomel. But I think it's generally safe. I like what Keith Littlewood has to say about thyroid hormone therapy. I think as long as you're getting all your nutrients in, then it's pretty beneficial. And I've noticed, like some days I've taken like T3, aspirin, magnesium bicarbonate, and like just like stack, and it definitely a Shilajit, and it feels like a nootropic stack. So yeah, I think it's just go slow. That's what I would say. Heather says, thoughts on powdered milk? The reason why I'm asking is because it's the only milk I can find that hasn't been fortified with synthetic A and D. Yeah, I think there are some good brands out there, and I think it is better than liquid fortified milk, especially because you can rehydrate it with good water. And if you use like bicarbonate rich water, then I think it's even better. So I'm a fan of powdered milk. I think it gets a bad rap. I used it to make pancakes for a while, and they tasted great, and the consistency was fine. So yeah, that's actually a great option, and I think it's more affordable as well. Let's see. You mentioned that there are many untapped business opportunities for people. Care to offer some ideas to explore? Yeah, I mean, the best one I would say is like whatever health condition you're dealing with, heal from it, which is easier than you think. It's mostly in your mind why you can't heal from it. All the solutions are there. It's just a matter of not getting lost in information overload. And once you heal from it, then help other people heal from it and monetize that. But do it efficiently. Don't sell them a million things. That's kind of my goal with the CLF protocols, like prioritizing. It's like, yes, you can do this and this and this too, but start with this, right? That's kind of the idea. Like start with the basics. So affiliate marketing, not multi-level marketing, but affiliate marketing where, you use my code, you save money, you don't have a monthly subscription you have to sign up for, you don't have to invest 500 or $1,000. You don't get your own business, which is BS. I fell for all that, by the way, which is why I bash it all the time. Multi-level marketing is a pyramid scheme, and there are middlemen that you pay, and it's called the downline and the upline, and it's a total waste of money. Now, I have friends that do it, essential oils and stuff, whatever, not here to argue, but it's just, people have limited money, right? Especially working minimum wage jobs or whatever. So, it's just kind of sad to me. It's kind of parasitic that these MLMs exist and they're marketing it as affordable and all this stuff. So that said, starting a blog, writing about your experience, starting a YouTube channel, putting affiliate links in there. Again, not MLM, affiliate links where like use this code, you say. And most websites at the bottom will have an affiliate section, where if you like their product, you can sign up as an affiliate, you put your name, your email, and boom, you're in. There are some companies where you have to reach out to them. That's maybe like 10% of my companies that I work with, but most it's just right on their website. So that's the best way. And then even your coworkers, right? If you're working at a retail job, it's like they're seeing that you're benefiting from something. Say, hey, use my code and whatever. And you just multiple streams of income. That's really, and I think I was thinking about this yesterday. Really, the most secure job you can have, I think, is farming, because I think it's only going to get worse as far as our food situation. And, when I think about my job, it's kind of volatile. Like, if I couldn't get more bottles, if I couldn't get more raw materials, it'd be over. No more Mitolife. But if I'm growing food, that's unlimited. So I'm probably going to start trying to move into that in the next 5 or 10 years and just transition to that probably. But yeah, producing your own food for people is really, I think, the most secure job and the most valuable. And there's so much room for upgrading it. The water that you give the animals, the food that you give the animals. Our chickens are steak-fed chickens. They're eating predominantly saturated fats. All the trimmings, because I don't like the fat in my steak, I'm a lean meat guy, I give them to the chickens. So, how many farms are doing that? Probably not many. It's going to the dog or something. Let's see here. You should do a podcast episode on your health journey. I know you've shared portions here and there, but I'd love to hear the whole story from one go, from childhood onward. Childhood. Okay, cool. My health. Done. I'll do it. Yeah, I need more ideas for podcast guests and solo shows. Once again, just frankly, I've been overwhelmed trying to keep my head above water, just juggling a million things, keeping in touch with family and friends, and barely my family just because I'm so busy. I used to FaceTime once a week. Now it's like every 2 weeks. But that's really important to me to stay in touch with them, my mother and father and brother. So, yeah, I think if you guys could help me out by telling me what you want to see, even as far as Mitolife Academy videos, that's really cool. But I'm still actually trying to think of what my last video of the month should be for advanced. If you have any ideas, I usually like to have it controversial. So, let's see. What do you think about eating fish that you catch from lakes? I think it's amazing. Yeah, we have a lake here, very fortunate, on the property that has sunfish, crappie, bass, some trout. And warm water fish are generally better because they have less antifreeze, aka PUFAs, in their tissues. Omega-3 fatty acids are antifreeze. They allow fluidity and movement. And warm water fish, they're rarely freezing. I mean, up here the lake freezes, so maybe they have some, maybe it's a 50-50 mix. But versus, an Alaskan salmon where it's predominantly unsaturated fats in the tissue. It's better if you can to find warm water fish that you enjoy, or find ways to prepare them that you enjoy. But I think it's awesome. I think fishing is awesome. I'm trying to get more into it eventually, and I think it's a great way to procure protein and minerals. Jeffrey says, I megadose Purely K as much as I can afford. It's amazing. I average 4 a day. Jeffrey, that's awesome. I think even 2 a day would do it, 400 micrograms, because 800 micrograms is that's like reversing calcification dosage. That's probably plenty, but I mean, there's so much literature. I'm trying to get kind of a inventory of literature down, bookmarked with the different dosages. But from what I've seen, even like 300 micrograms has really wide acting effects. And I'm talking about MK7 form of K2. Teresa says, should I be concerned with balancing the fat soluble vitamins that I'm supplementing? I take liver capsules for vitamin A, and I take purely K and unique E. Do they need to be in a ratio? Not that I'm aware of. Your body will only use what it needs and then excrete the rest. With vitamin K and vitamin E, from my understanding, where most people are at, you're pretty much going to be using most of it. There's none that's going to be wasted. Same thing with vitamin A. It's really the vitamin D that people have to be worried about, which can be stored as D3, which is totally unnatural. But when you're, whole food sources of A, I should emphasize that, because I'm not talking about retinol palmitate. I'm talking about, beef liver, butter, eggs, animal foods, cheese, usually dairy that has retinol in it. Really hard to overdose on that, because you need that to, for thyroid hormone production, for all your steroidal hormones, for copper, for loading copper into ceruloplasmin. There's so many things that retinol is used for that I think it's really hard to be to overdose on it. Nathan says, how's the heat there? I'm in Washington near Tacoma. Tomorrow it's going to be 113 degrees Fahrenheit. I feel like I'm in Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I can't complain because it's only, I think, for a week or two where there's these insane temperatures here in Idaho. But yeah, it's supposed to be like 100 degrees for the next week. So yeah, lots of fans, lots of tank tops, lots of cold water. I've actually been putting cold water in the fridge, which is nice. Recommend drinking cold water. And yeah, just kind of riding it out. I remember when I was living in my RV, it was like an oven, and I was like writing papers for college, and I was just treating it like a sauna. And I was just letting go to that. I was just like, okay, I'm in a sauna for a couple weeks or a month or whatever, and I'm just gonna enjoy it. And I made do. I just like guzzled water. It's like, okay, I'm getting out my heavy metals. And if you think about it that way, it's like a forced detox. And so you just have to kind of allow that to happen. And I think it's like a natural process. Sometimes you don't even need equipment to get it done. We have a steam barrel sauna, but as long as you're keeping minerals in and staying hydrated, I think you just ride it out, and don't let the heat get to you. It's the same as the cold. It's like there's less light, wintertime, use your light therapy, and you just ride it out. Let's see. Would love it if you did an episode on teeth health in the future. I definitely will. Yeah, I keep hearing stories of like fruitarians and friends that are having issues with their teeth, and it's just not spoken about until it's too late. And eye health to some degree, but the teeth, I mean, I do mouthwash multiple times a day now. I really like the oregano mouthwash from North American Urban Spice, but I've been experimenting with some other ones. And as I mentioned, the pearl powder from Crucial 4, I do that a couple times a day. especially, because I'm drinking coffee. I cut out wine completely just because I was getting an immune reaction from it. Um, didn't feel like it was working for my system. But, you know, coffee can definitely have an effect on the enamel, orange juice, a lot of the things that we talk about in the metabolic health community. You really have to take care of your teeth, and I don't think it's talked about enough. Um, and there's all sorts of different views about brushing and flossing and blotting brushes and all these things. Um, but I'm trying to kind of create my own protocol. I think it's just like the skin. There's skin products you can use on your skin, but there's things you can take orally. So, for example, you could use vitamin E on the skin. You can use aspirin, or you can take them internally. I think internally or orally is better, or both. Um, and there's systemic effects if you do that. So, but yeah, I'll definitely, K2-7 from my research is the best thing for teeth. It's so overlooked and it's so underrated, and everyone's deficient. Why is everyone deficient? Excess calcium, excess vitamin D. Everyone's deficient in K2. I think I show the article like every, let me see. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. I'll actually pull it up. Maybe I'll start to put some links under these lives to give you guys like some homework or follow-up stuff to look into. But I've read this one multiple times just because it's so fascinating. Vitamin K2 and its impacts on tooth epigenetics. And this goes into the whole cascade of how, it's kind of anti-sugar. Sugars may reduce the tooth's natural defenses through endocrine signaling. I think that's because of, peripheral deficiencies, like other deficiencies. They say low sugar and high K2. So there's like a Weston A. Price kind of vibe here, or ancestral paleo vibe. But if you drop that and just ignore that, how the tooth develops caries, a summary of the features of vitamin K2. I think I read this whole thing on a plane ride, actually. How dental tissue is nourished. So here we go. Vitamin K2 exerts an impact on salivary signaling and composition and activation potency. So 3 components of saliva are K2 dependent. Even insulin and the pancreas secretions are dependent on K2. Saliva serves as an important player in the maintenance of proper mineralization of the teeth's enamel. The saliva buffers demineralization. It delivers building blocks for remineralization. Some types of cheese have been asserted to display anti-cariogenic properties. This is due to its fermented bacteria that produce higher amounts of K2. So that they're talking about menaquinone 7 there, and they're talking about aged cheese. So what I was thinking about recently is maybe breaking the K2 capsules open in the mouth and just swishing with them is kind of like a oil pulling kind of practice. But I'll post this article in the comments. I think everyone should read it. I think it's super important. And I wish I had known this when I, gently put a glass bottle up to my teeth and shipped it when I was vegan, because I know that I was just K2 deficient. And I believe I was supplementing D3 at the time as well, because I fell for that hype. Thoughts on shrooms, the psychedelics ones? Oh yeah, here, I'll put a teeth show in here though, just so I have it. I think they're overused. I think, the real psychedelic is magnesium and shilajit, and we kind of need to get more in our mind, not out of it, from what I've seen. Because when we get out of our mind too much and into our body and all the little sayings that they say, then we kind of get away from reality, and we start to think that, we create our own reality and we could manifest things, and it's a slippery slope where we start to just forget how important physicality is and maintaining the physical structure of our cells and our neurons especially, and that our body needs certain nutrients to thrive and to function. And if that's in place, then our mind works properly and our thought process, and we don't get like delusions of grandeur and psychosis and schizophrenic like tendencies and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say more than psychedelics, people need minerals and mineral balance. And I've just seen it too much face to face, where there's just anybody home, it's like just gone, right? Like, hello, anybody there, right? Just the eyes are just glazed over, and glazed over with lipofuscin specifically. And they physically or metaphorically cannot see. So that's do they have an application? Sure. But I think, things like cannabis, alcohol, tobacco are generally safer as long as they're not abused. Like here in Idaho, cannabis is illegal, and so there's a lot of other drug usage like meth. And like in my area, there's like a lot of like crime and stuff for that reason, because people just lose their mind on like meth and stuff. So that sucks, because I feel like if they're on, if a plant was not illegal, which I think is stupid, like cannabis, then it has a very balancing effect, especially if it's like a Charlotte's Web strain or one that's like high CBD to THC. And so I'm speaking from experience, because I was in the cannabis industry for a couple of years, and I just, from my alternative health perspective, I was just observing all the people I was delivering to, and going to their house and their apartment and hearing their conversations and looking on their kitchen counter and seeing their foods and their supplements, and like, okay, they don't have the full picture, right? They're like doing vegetable oil and smoking weed. It's retarded, right? So if there's the right combination, I think people would be a lot better off, and there could be a benefit there. Again, cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, I think are so abused and so misused, and in their purest forms, they're useful as a painkiller, right? As a lipofuscin degrader in the form of alcohol, nicotine for parasitic infections or neurodegeneration, cannabis as well. But even alcohol has an effect. Even ethanol has a benefit, in my opinion. Not promoting them for everyone, but there's actually a how it's made thing we watched recently on tequila, and it's such a process. The Weber agave plant in Mexico. It's such a process I think it's like 15 or 20 steps to get the agave plant into tequila. And there's like a fermenting process and a crushing process, and there's all these things, converting the starch to sugar and the sugar to alcohol. Um, but yeah, that was kind of a long-winded response to the psychedelic one. Let's see here. What do you know about the causes of dark circles under the eyes? Um, I think that's B vitamin deficiency and just general uh, bad liver health. So for the liver, retinol, vitamin E, vitamin K2, choline from eggs, sugar from carbohydrates, or sucrose or whatever works for you, potatoes, fruit. Those are the main things. Obviously, animal protein is very beneficial for the liver as well. Um, and just the B vitamins from dairy. But generally, dark circles under the eyes are just a sign of stress. So maybe increasing your salt intake, looking at your sleep. Are you doing everything to like black out your room? To, are you grounding when you sleep if you're in the right environment for that? There's a lot going on there. How would you go about eliminating H. pylori? Wild oregano is what I would use. I think there's research that wipes it out. Awesome, Joe. Does the Oasis G series help with mold as well? Yeah, it does. I actually forgot to mention that. Jeffrey says the CLF protocol and Mitolife Academy is helping me work towards it. Yeah, I forgot to mention the air filters since I don't have mine plugged in since we're off grid. These fans don't use much electricity, but air filters use quite a bit. If you're on grid, it doesn't really matter, because it's unlimited, so to speak. But yeah, the hypoallergenic air filters do kill mold. So those are very wise. Even if it's just the Air Angel, it's just a couple $100. Those are really great to take with you if you go to a hotel, just to run that in the bathroom so the blue light's not hitting you. Was your Grow a Pair protocol real or a joke? If it's real, where can I find it? So if you go to my channel and you're subscribed to the Academy, then you can go back, and especially if you're advanced, all the videos will show up interspersed in the Mitolife Radio videos episodes. So you should see it there. You might be able to even search it on my channel, but or just do Control F if you're on the computer or whatever. But you should see it there in the list. Without the CLF protocol, Mitolife, personally, I would still be lost. Oh, it's awesome, Jeffrey. I'm happy to hear that. Sometimes I wonder about the impact I'm making. You've laid the foundation in a way no one else has. I appreciate your approach and all the groundwork you've done. Appreciate that, Jeffrey. Thank you. Teresa says, what would you recommend for slowing, reversing the weight gain from going pro-metabolic? It's a good question. So, there's a lot with that question. I've been studying up on progesterone because I've been playing with progesterone cream, which is not the female hormone. That's like saying testosterone is the male hormone. Yes, to some degree, but both genders have both, right? So like women need testosterone. And if they get too much, they get like hirsutism, right? They get hair and mustache and all this stuff in the wrong places. But men need progesterone. And it's almost more foundational than testosterone because things are made from progesterone. The reason why I'm talking about this is excess cellulite, specifically on like the abdomen or the hips, usually that midsection where people get weight gain, that is often caused by excess estrogen, simply called estrogen dominance, but it's a little more complicated than that. Progesterone is that, to put it simply, is counters estrogen. Some people say it synergizes with it, but it really opposes it. And so you can raise progesterone levels naturally. That would be like with vitamin E, which counters, opposes estrogen as well and allows progesterone to increase. Or you can just go bioidentical progesterone cream, which is very safe. I mean, unless you're like slathering it on 24/7 every hour, maybe. But from what I've heard from a lot of really smart people, it's almost impossible to OD on progesterone, especially if you're a woman. If you're a man, you need to probably take some DHEA with it. Danny Roddy's talked about this before. It's like a little ratio of some DHEA with progesterone. But as a woman, it's incredible. Kind of like a heal-all. I mean, it prevents breast cancers, arthritis, osteoporosis, stress, reproductive cancers, PMS-like symptoms, just so many things. So, yeah, I mean, the progesterone estrogen thing is just one aspect to your question about weight gain from pro-metabolic. My answer to that from my experience, 11 years into health, would be just sweat in a sauna and, make sure that you're taking vitamin E so that as you're, breaking down those fat cells, you have vitamin E in the system to buffer from the increase in estrogen from breaking down the PUFAs in your tissue. But sweating in a sauna is a passive way to lose weight. And that's like what brings everyone to sauna therapy, right? And you would think like the Stairmaster and like the elliptical and the treadmill are all ways to lose weight as well, but those are actually all ways to gain weight because they all increase your estrogen more so than a sauna would do, because you're not just sweating, but you're sweating in a sympathetic state, which is different from sweating in a parasympathetic state. That's the benefit of sweating in a steam sauna or a dry sauna. So, if you could find like a far infrared sauna, or you can invest in one, or you can build your own, or whatever you want to do, but sweat while you're sitting down on a towel, that is the best thing. And just, make sure sodium chloride's coming in, make sure magnesium's coming in, your potassium, maintain your mineral balance, and, drink filtered water, not spring, tap, or well water, or mineral water, but drink reverse osmosis or filtered water, get your minerals in, and then that weight should just start effortlessly coming off. And there's many other things you could do. Red light therapy is really how far you want to go. But if you did, the far infrared sauna and red light therapy, like 10 to 20 minutes a day, weight gain is really an issue of energy deficiency. And, to go further, you could say voltage deficiency in the cell. And minerals help with that, but bioavailable copper also helps with that, with generating sufficient cellular voltage. And basically you're trying to turn oxygen into water, and you need copper to do that. And you need, cytochrome C oxidase to do that. And you need copper to do that. And you need magnesium for several of the complexes in the electron transport chain. So you're trying to turn oxygen into water. You're trying not to do the Fenton reaction and create rust in your body, which is oxidative stress, which causes weight gain and every disease. So if you just focus like on not losing weight, but optimizing cellular efficiency, not with liposomal supplements, not with the Convid prescription, which is ascorbic acid, zinc, vitamin D, and omega-3s, not with that, with the right things, then, and you might want to actually take a break from working out. triggers a lot of people. I mean, what do you mean move less? Might be the prescription to help you out. Because you'll notice a lot of the, overweight people, they're exercising their their big butts off, right? They're exercising tons. And they're just going round and round. They're not getting any results, right? And they're running up mountains. And they're going on these crazy jogs, jogging on the sidewalk every day. And it's just tearing up the system. Exercise, especially endurance exercise, is a stress to the body. And if you're already under stress, even just oxidative stress, because you have iron overload, you have excess iron in the tissues that can't get out because the doorways are closed because you don't have copper, what happens? Then you're just pedal to the metal, and fumes are coming out of your engines. And those fumes are called ROS and RNS, reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species. And if you have excess hydrogen peroxide production, and that's reacting with iron, then it's over. And you're going to have weight gain. So I hope that wasn't too in depth, but it might be a matter of moving less, which is so counterintuitive to what you think. Would love a video on your survival stash if you haven't already. Okay, survival stash. Making notes what you guys are saying. So yeah, and I've been trying like more production than storage and hoarding. It's kind of the goal. But you can hoard honey, because they found it in Egyptian tombs. So, there's certain things where way better than buying those stupid, boxes or cans and survival MREs and all that stuff. Honey, right? Another video I'd love to hear, you sit down with your fiance, if you're interested in being public, and talk about how you set up your homestead and your experience and plans for the future. It's a cool idea. Okay. Noted. I'll see if she's interested. What are the top things to look for when moving off grid? Well, there's a lot of context with that question. So your energy sources. So you have solar, wind, hydroelectric, and geothermal. Those are like the four main that are talked about. And solar is obviously the most utilized. If you can find a place with micro hydro or a continuous waterfall where the drop is at least 30 feet, then you've won. That's really all you need. If there's no running water, then you're looking at solar, and you have to look at the elevation. There's like a little thing you could buy that shows the shadows of the trees around. I mean, you might have to just chop down some trees like we've done, but the elevation, where to place the panels. If you're in a valley like I was at the previous house, then solar doesn't make sense at all because it's only sunny for a certain amount of time. But yeah, there's so much context. So those are just some ideas. I would say power generation is like the biggest factor. Also just water source, but generally on a homestead, you're going to have, you're going to have a well, or if you're even more lucky, then you're going to have a spring that feeds the house like we do. But most of the time it's a well. And if you're on a well, then that's great. You have water security, but it's not great because you have iron, a lot of iron generally in a well, most likely. And so that's just another cost of filters, right? You need filters anyway, spring or not, spring or well anyway, but you're going to go through more filters if you're on a well versus a spring. Why? Because you have more iron. And the more iron you have, the faster those sediment filters are going to be caked in brown. So, yeah, lots to think about. I would just say think about power, think about water, how you want to live. We're setting this place up as kind of like a hospital in a way. I mean, we don't have like all the equipment, but, so to speak, biohacking stuff. Like if I got Lyme disease, I could probably knock it out in a week or two. Very confident of that. If I got cancer, I could probably knock it out in a few months. Very confident of that. If I broke an arm or I had a gashing open wound, pretty confident I could heal that too. So yeah, it really just depends on how far you want to go and what you want to be prepared for. But I think for just bare bones, looking at those things that I said are a good idea. Should probably plug in my phone. I didn't even think about that. It's going through power like crazy here. Let's see here. Omar says, do you still take a blue-green algae supplement? I don't. That was my lunch for several years. I think there's something to be said about E3 Live. What is it called? Not Blue Magic, but there's one where it's phycocyanin and phenylethylamine. I could say you could drop the phycocyanin, which is a pigment, just like lutein, zeaxanthin, astaxanthin, beta carotene. It's a pigment, which could be good or bad. It's probably both. But phenylethylamine, called PEA, which is often called the love molecule, which is found in cacao, that can be extracted from BGA, and it is an antidepressant on the level of a pharmaceutical drug. Very helpful for recovering from brain injury and stress and all sorts of things. But I would say just drop the blue-green algae and just take straight, concentrated, isolated phenylethylamine, because you don't need the phycocyanin. And the only other reason you'd be taking blue-green algae is for, the amino acids, which I question whether they're absorbable. I used to think they were. I used to think they were superior to animal flesh. Now I doubt it. Maybe in a survival situation, but to me, the best thing about blue-green algae is the phenylethylamine, which is a super mood booster. Jeffrey says, soon I'm going to upload the video on mystery diagnosis I saw on Discovery Channel, and it turned out to be iron overload. Yeah, I still can watch that, Jeffrey. If you ever send me a link just directly to it, I'll check it out. Man, I think H. pylori might be causing my rosacea and also low stomach acid, so indirectly my eczema. I'm gonna test for it. How would you go about killing it? I already bang oregano. Joe, spore-based probiotics help a lot. So I do like a combination of wild P73 and spore-based probiotics. Pretty much with every meal. That's like the best way to take spore-based probiotics. I mean, it'll work regardless, but you really have that endotoxin effect. Mostly, it's called post-prandial, so like after a meal, meaning after you've eaten food. So, you can take them on an empty stomach, they will have some effect, but really the worst effect of endotoxemia is whenever you eat a meal. Because people that are really screwed up, it's every time they eat, they have endotoxins seeping into their bloodstream. That's called endotoxemia. And then that screws the immune system, that screws energy production, and all sorts of things. Thoughts on green tea and matcha? Do you think it lives up to the hype? I'm not a fan because they're really rich in fluoride, albeit natural. They still have a significant amount of fluoride, and you know, there's question, sodium fluoride versus calcium fluoride and their effects. If you enjoy it, I wouldn't sweat it. If you're on Shilajit, who cares? You know, doesn't really matter. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would rather do coffee, even decaf, than green tea. What benefits do you see with drinking chaga tea, and do you just throw away the mushrooms after steeping? Yeah, I'm actually interviewing my friend Denard in about 2 weeks. He owns a chaga company, and yeah, I've been wanting to have an episode about chaga mushroom. Uh, Inonotus obliquus is its name, because it's so underrated. I feel like it's more of a winter thing. Like my favorite time to drink chaga is in the winter. It's a little harder in the summer unless you do like a cold steep, which you can do. Just like make cold brew coffee, make cold brew chaga, which just means very simply you brew it just like you would, but then you just keep it in the fridge till it cools, and then you drink it like that. Um, Very rich in SOD, superoxide dismutase, very rich in melanin, which could be beneficial for someone like me that burns fairly easily, especially in combination with vitamin E. So it's an internal sunscreen. It's an anti-stress thing. It's an endurance booster. I believe it has B vitamins, um, magnesium. Has a lot of minerals in it. Has copper in it. Also has iron in it. But remember, whenever there's iron, there is copper. And I think a lot of people forget that. Just like wherever there's PUFAs, there's vitamin E, but not so much with the canola oil, right? Which is why I created my CLF, because it's not like, the vitamin E kept up with your PUFA ingestion. No, because you were raised on burritos, you're raised on processed foods with vegetable oil, right? That's not like a salmon where the vitamin E kind of balances it. Um, yeah, it's all context, right? It's all overall balance, but and do you just throw away the mushrooms after steeping? So really, the key with chaga that most people don't know is that most people are wasting it because most people overuse it. So it only takes a piece like this big to make like a gallon of chaga tea, and you could reuse that piece like for 4 brews. Basically, when it's spent when the brew is light, and when you didn't use enough when the brew is light. Maybe you just didn't brew it long enough. So slow and low, just kind of just like making bone broth. I think below 160 Fahrenheit is kind of like the way to go. Ideally overnight or for 12 hours. I like to, in the winter, just keep it on the wood stove all the time and just keep adding water or whatever to it. And ideally use the pulverized portion versus the chunks. So you can just throw whole chunks in your, quart saucepan or whatever. But ideally you want to mash it down to increase the surface area, because there's different nutrients in the dark portion versus the orange portion. Different solubility of nutrients are found in each portion of the chaga mushroom. And it's technically not a mushroom, but it's semantics. So Yeah, I hope that answers your question. But just remember, less is more, and pulverize it ideally instead of using the whole chunks. Joe says, my dad is recovering from alcoholism. I'm going to get him on some Shilajit and Mag. I gave my non a bottle of Dissolvidol. She has calcified cyst on her spleen from a car crash. Maybe she needs K2. Yeah, for cysts, I mean, progesterone cream, vitamin E, Dissolvidol. If I had cysts, that's what I would use. You know, even if you didn't have the progesterone cream, vitamin E and systemic enzymes are huge for cysts. And it is kind of like high dosing the systemic enzymes. You know, I would say like 8 to 12 a day minimum. What happened here? Just press something. Okay, I don't know what I did there. Oh, there we go. It's interesting, so many people getting veneers, you can't cheat a K2-7 deficiency. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's like, why is everyone K2 deficient? It's not that they're not Weston A. Price, it's not that they're not paleo, they're not ancestral, that's because they're getting veneers and their teeth are falling out. It's a much deeper issue, right? The fruitarians aren't just K2 deficient. It's from the calcification component, right? And the K2 deficiency is secondary to the calcification, right? And this is kind of like the whole CLF thing. It's not just like megadosing, 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 because some people say that's my protocol. No, you're looking at the burn rate and you're looking at what's causing things to burn up. And you can just megadose, 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 and it will help to reverse over time. But what you have to do it in combination with proper nutrition and stopping the stuff coming in, right? Like the excess iron, like the excess calcium, primarily in the water supply, but also in the food and supplements. When are you going to get Shilajit and K back in? Hey Tara, so K will be probably mid to late July. I'm hoping mid-July. And the Panacea will be back in 2 days, or no, sorry, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Monday, and on Wednesday. But tomorrow there'll be about 220 coming in. So I would check in about 11 a.m. to noon PST. It's usually that 11 to 1 PST window where we get restocked on the Shilajit. And again, I say this every time, but we're still working on a permanent solution to staying in stock. It's like a handcrafted product. You know, we import it direct from Russia, so it's a lot to get this out there, even in limited batches. But we are working to make it to where it's not limited supply every time and it keeps selling out. But we've been trying at this for like a year and a half. I kind of just have to like fly to Russia or something. Teresa says, I'd love to hear a podcast update on spirituality. I enjoyed your last episode where you talked about why you're not a Christian anymore, even though I'm Christian. If you're comfortable sharing, that is cool. Yeah, I don't really have too much of an update there. I just, I'll make a note of it anyway if see the interest. It's one of those things where I just stopped like overthinking it, because I think just like nutrition, people argue back and forth, you know, and in the end, I think you could just be a good person and leave it at that. And you don't really need to, you know, I guess people just have fun philosophizing and stuff. I really like Adam Bergstrom's approach. I mean, I think you could tell in a way that how someone treats people, right? So like the nastiest people I've ever met were Christians. The nicest people I've ever met were New Agers, right? Or let's just, you know, say what people would call a New Ager. So, you know, you can find people in all camps, right? Obviously, but I just think why not just simplify it and just treat people, you know, good, and don't be an asshole, and you know, most of all, be lighthearted. Because I think when people get so intense into something, then they kind of lose sight of just what it means to be a human. And it's like helping others, treating people nicely, you know, that deserve to be treated nicely, right? Obviously, if someone screws you over or they're overstepping a boundary, then it's over, right? But yeah, I guess I'm just trying to simplify and not overthink things, and kind of just go off experience. I think that's the best thing. Healing eczema video, please. Okay, I'll make a note to that. Healing eczema. So mine went away for a reason unknown to me because I was raised with acne and eczema. So I guess that could be part of my health story solo show. Well, I guess, and brain fog. Those were my three issues. And that's why I got into health. I didn't have a debilitating disease. I just had skin issues and my memory sucked. But I remember growing up, my mom was into homeopathy. So she used a lot of homeopathy stuff on me. And we had aloe vera plants in the backyard. And so she would peel the aloe leaf. And whenever I was tearing up my arm till it was bleeding, especially my inner arm and the other side of the elbow here, that's where I would get the most extreme eczema, and I would just scratch and scratch until my skin was raw and bleeding. To stop the itching, we would gather aloe, and I would take my shirt off because I think I would get eczema on my back and stuff too, and so she would just rub it over wherever I had the rashes. And I'm sure there was something in the aloe that helps. And actually, on my Matt Blackburn website, I interviewed a guy. What's his name? Tip of my tongue, can't remember. But it's a guy that started the aloe, or rather, he took over the Aloe One Stockton company, and he sells inner leaf frozen aloe because all the aloe vera you can buy at the health food store sucks, just like all the bone broth sucks. It's all room temp and just not enzyme active, and it's just kind of like garbage. And so you can buy shipped to your door frozen fresh aloe, and you thaw it out and you just drink that. And internally, I would think the inner leaf aloe would be excellent for eczema. Has a ton of minerals in it, and I'm sure a ton of copper, and that's probably its biggest benefit there. You know, everyone has their own tool chest and tools that they pull out of it. So these are my tools that I would recommend. But I know retinol, vitamin E, those all, and copper also play a huge role in skin health. I would definitely hit the eczema area with red light therapy often as well. Cold sores, L-lysine, you know, it's just a Band-Aid fix, but L-lysine, the amino acid, some companies sell it with beta glucans in it with it, and that really helps. Or just chaga mushroom tea will help as well, cold sores. Yeah, it's a deeper issue that I think consistent use of Rife technology, like this resonant light behind me, if you're consistent with that daily, I think that could help. Or the Sota silver pulsar, potentially, the blood electrification. But yeah, it's just a sign of a deeper viral issue, you know, and before this worldwide quote unquote pandemic of the flu, you know, I guess people thought they were just sterile, but no one understands that they're full of everything. And, you know, pathogens do exist, obviously. And it's kind of like, what are you deficient in? Everything. What are you infected with? Everything. And you don't want to get neurotic about that and say, oh, okay, I just got to like turpentine and enemas and just ozone rectal and just all and just go crazy, you can, but you'll probably get sick. And so it's more of just a lifestyle of like, obviously stopping as much of the stuff coming in, stopping the tap water, right? Bathing in tap water, just stacking all this stuff. Favorite books of any genre. I think I've said it multiple times, but The Body Shape Diet, still one of my favorites, even though I disagree with a lot of what he says about PUFAs in there. I think it's just a great crash course to endocrinology. I think what else? If you want a nonfiction, fiction book, Mist is a fun one. MYST. Just a fun little story. Yeah, I'm trying to get back into reading. I'm still going through this one, Death by Calcium, and I guess the Calcium Lie guy is coming out with a book called the Vitamin C Lie, Robert Thompson, and I think he's pro ascorbic acid, but this is a good one, as I mentioned before. Just getting into minerals and yeah, some of the guests on my show, I think Morley told me about some pretty good books. Let me see if I could jog my memory here. Yeah, the Milk book, The Milk of Human Kindness is Not Pasteurized. That was pretty good. You see. Oh, Mitochondria and the Future of Medicine. That's like a really dense book. Because there's one called Power, Sex, and Suicide by Nick Lane, and it's just as dense as this one, but this one's a little easier to understand. This is by Lee No, and it just goes into mitochondria and how they work, and it's just so intricate. I always get intimidated learning about the mitochondria and energy production because there's just a million steps, and it's just all this stuff is happening thousands of times a second in our body. It's just pretty crazy. There's just so much intelligence built into the system, and if the body has the right things, then it all works. But we're in a situation where we're missing so many nutrients as a result of calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis that there's been like a wrench thrown into the machine. We can't generate proper ATP in whatever tissue that we have the issue with. Another podcast idea, go through all your emergency healing stuff. I'd love to know how you heal broken bones. Okay, so emergency healing. Yeah, that might be a Academy video because it'd be easier to show than talk about, but yeah, that's a good idea. Do you think health coach certification is worth it? I've been thinking about doing that, but I have some doubts. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, there's only one I think that's worth it, and it's the RCP. And I don't agree with everything with him, but rcp123.org. Morley Robbins, RCP practitioner course. And I forget how much it is. I think the price is here. Let me see. I actually got an email about it. If you have the time, I would do his. I think everything else is a waste of time. I don't agree with everything, like I've reiterated with Morley, specifically about the PUFAs and sugar thing, but everything else is amazing. And, for me, it's like no one has the whole puzzle. Some people have more of the puzzle than others. But it's one of those things where you don't count on on one person to have the whole picture, because that's just stupid. It's not how it works. So here I'm about to see how much it is. Yeah, so it's about 2,400 bucks, and you get, I guess, 10 to 14 classes or something like that. But I guess they're enrolling for the next 4 days, or that's when it closes. So check that out. Big fan of his work. He's a return guest. Really respect him and his work. Um, but all these online, schools and stuff where you become an alternative health practitioner or alternative health certified or practitioner certification or whatever. I think it's mostly BS. 99% of it, because it's just going to be your basic stuff, basic stuff like eat your greens, take your green powders, drink your green juice, you know, Whole 30. It's just a very basic view, you know. But when you get beyond the basic and you get to alternative health, a layer deeper, then you get out of basic land into mineral land, and then you get into vitamin and enzyme land. And then you look at the roads between these three lands and you say, wow, I've never been taught real health in my life, either in college, if you got your doctorate or whatever, you'll learn some things, but you won't learn that everyone on the planet has iron overload. You won't learn about yellow fat disease and how this is a huge industry that's being pushed and all these connecting factors, right? And so if all you get from his thing is the power of retinol and copper and magnesium, that is invaluable. And it is more simple than people think. That's kind of what I'm trying to emphasize here with this Mitolife Academy is like, yes, I have little tips and little protocols and things that you could do, but most of all, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And you don't even have to understand all the mechanisms. You can if you want, but just to know the overall bird's eye view of how the body functions and how excess iron causes oxidative stress and how to mitigate it, you help reverse any condition, and you can help your family and your friends that are lost in Dr. Berg's land or Joe Rogan's or whoever other mainstream alternative health person, because Joe Rogan does portray himself as such. You get out of those mind traps and you get to reality where you're like, oh wow, no one's talking about these things, right? It's like there's a very small handful of people that are talking about these really important points that affect every condition. Could I pressure cook chaga into tea? Joe, that's a good question. Be sure to ask that when I post on Instagram for the Q&A. I don't think that's a good idea. It's probably better than nothing, but there are some heat sensitive nutrients in chaga where you don't want to like boil it. Do a podcast on castor oil. Yeah, I actually have. I was planning on doing that, so put that down. Do you guys want to have kids? If so, what do you think you'll do to prepare nutritionally? For what it's worth, I think you'd be a great dad. You're so patient with dumb questions. I appreciate it. Yes, and largely retinol, vitamin E, and K2. I think it's a travesty that most parents are K2 deficient. Obviously, I had braces. Almost everyone I know had braces. One of my friends growing up had the headgear. Everyone's dentition's messed up, right? And you always hear about Weston A. Price that traveled the world looking at indigenous people and they had perfect dentition, and he thinks it was activator X or K2. And just one factor, right? pun intended, factor X, but there's many other things. And um, I think copper is really important. Um, that's why I love elk antler velvet. Actually, the moose that keeps visiting us in the house here, it's walking right up to the house, big bull moose, is in the velvet stage of his uh, antler production. And that's when the antlers are growing the fastest. And it's full of this thing called IGF-1, these insulin growth factors and other growth factors, and even uh, different types of collagen, 1 and 2, and different, I think 3, various different types of collagen, and all these minerals, and glucosamine and chondroitin and all these things that people just supplement in isolation for joint health and stuff, connective tissue. But it's pretty much like powdered bone broth. And that's my friend David Limaker up in Canada that has this company, Vigor. And whenever he has a sale, I just got an email. I always buy 12. And that usually lasts me, I think, about maybe 4 or 5 months or something. And I usually take 4 at a time, once or twice a day. But I think the minerals, are really important for creating a healthy child. And, obviously Shilajit to get, your whole periodic table in there, in the animal foods. Joe says, "You freaking nerd, bro. I wanted you to say something fun." But of course, Matt says, "Mitochondrial energy production." That's funny. Let's see. Teresa says, "You mentioned RCP instead of health coach cert. Are there any others? Can we get CLF certified? I definitely pay you for that. I just know people feel more comfortable with seeing certifications." Maybe someday. That'd be fun. I really need to better manage my time. Admittedly, I've sucked at that lately. I feel like the Mitolife radio is keeping me afloat, honestly, because I feel intuitively when I'm like falling behind in research and just keeping up. But yeah, this academy and the podcast is truly a blessing to be able to keep up on the latest. And people say, "Oh, you just get the foundation down and then you just coast." But understanding the mechanisms is useful, especially if you're talking to someone that's never heard this information before, because I'll bring up something like aspirin and they're just like, "What are you talking about? I'm not going to supplement that. That's not good. It's just an NSAID, right? It doesn't have any benefit." But if you can explain the mechanism of how it combats cancer, then it's another story. And it's not really about convincing people. It's just opening their world to something that works. Dr. Berg is so off base. My whole family follows his keto protocol. I did it for 2 years and landed in the hospital. I think he's a good guy, but just so misguided. Yeah, I think that's the case for most of these people. They're for the most part, good people, maybe a little caught up in, I've heard he makes quite a ton of money that he donates to Scientology. I'm sure it's like a revolving door of like people helping him and stuff in the Scientology community. But yeah, I think people get lost and they stop wanting to help people and just get like dollar signs. And I was actually interviewed on Asher Cowan's podcast last Friday called Awakening Consciousness. I think it's probably on YouTube by now. And I told my whole story, as I've never told it before, on how I got out of the omega-3 business. And yeah, it was quite the story. So yeah, I don't think it's not up yet. But yeah, here's the podcast. Really good guy. I spoke with him on the phone during my basically lawsuit, trying to get out of the omega-3 business. And, Adam Bergstrom was rising in my mind from knowing about him for years. And I was just questioning, you know, making money off of this substance that was harming people. And I wanted out. And this guy, well, as I was getting character assassinated, as I have been multiple times in my life, Asher came to the rescue and he just said, "Don't apologize, don't bend a knee." And it was really awesome. So definitely support their show. It's called Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. I think they've had a lot of, jab, if you know what I mean, episodes. I don't really talk about that much, but I like that idea, CLF certified. Yeah, I need to get better at like bookmarking studies because I have my folders here, and there's just so many. It's it can really be endless. And as I learned in the vitamin D debate with Kate Deering, Kitty Blomfield, Danny Roddy, and Jordy Dinkoff versus me, 4-on-1, I learned that, battling with studies, it's just back and forth. And I actually prefer to go off anecdotal research, AKA I know a person that almost died supplementing vitamin D3 or rat poison, right? Or omega-3 or cod liver oil. And there's just so many stories like that where you don't really need to try to, understand a study beyond the abstract and just who funded it and get into all this weeds. You can just look at what these substances are doing to people and just look at the lipofuscin on the face, right? Teresa says you should definitely take time to recuperate. Moving is so stressful. We understand if you got to step back a little. Appreciate it. Yeah, so far I haven't decided to press the pause button on the Academy. I think I'll be able to keep going, but behind me there you can see there's tons of boxes. Actually, no, it's over here. Behind the chair, there's a stack of boxes. And I haven't really touched one in weeks. So it's been one of those things. It's just like endless boxes and going through like 0 a day, which is soul crushing. So yeah, appreciate that. But really your suggestions help, just because I know I have a million things I can make videos on, but it really helps to for you guys to request things so that I could, just give you exactly what you want to see. I really like the idea of the teeth show that someone asked about, my health journey. We got survival stash, emergency healing. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. So I'm thinking of making homesteading videos. For the Academy, I don't know if you guys would like that, but like the setup that we have, like even the bees, because we built a bee shed. And this was not off any YouTube video or anything. This was just off of our mind. We built a structure around our 2 beehives, concrete foundation, electric fence. But there's just so much context where I don't know if it's worth it to make these videos on homesteading, because depending on where you're at, you're gonna have different predators, you're gonna have different climate. I guess a lot of people are in this climate, if you're in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, I caught up on questions. Is that 2 hours? I think it was 1:34. Yeah, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll wrap it up. 2.5 hours, just about. Yeah, stay tuned for the last advanced video. Probably be up in the next few days. It'll either be on progesterone, alcohol, or Benadryl. one of those. And I'll make a video on each of those eventually. But I think they're just all misunderstood. And so just kind of sharing my thoughts on them and their uses and stuff. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys on the next next video, and I'll probably try to do a Instagram live at least once a month. I'd like to get back into that. I think the last one I did was 3 months ago, and I think I commented that I'm getting off Instagram for good in that live, which is probably a good thing, but still, your questions and comments do help to kind of jog my memory and connect dots for me. So this is just as beneficial for me as it is for you. So yeah, thank you guys. See you on the next live. Next month's one will probably be a little earlier, so I'll be more settled in.